Yeah, so after 2 years of mostly silence on Sudan, it has now become the new cause for Western activists and for Muslims in the diaspora. And just like after October 7th, just like after October 7th, people who never thought about or never knew anything about Gaza or about Palestine, all of a sudden everyone became experts on the Middle East, and now everyone is an expert on Sudan. And unsurprisingly, this newfound expertise finds that just like with Gaza, the main culprits are the Arab states and the GCC, the UAE and so forth. With Gaza, it was mostly Egypt, but also Saudi Arabia and also the UAE and the GCC generally. They were always slandered as so-called Zionist accomplices by the liberal colonizer-activists and by diaspora collaborators who ran interference for the Western white power structure. So yes, we should talk about Sudan. We should talk about Sudan. Middle Nation has been talking about Sudan since the beginning. I think we have at least around 17 or 18 videos on the channel about Sudan. And we've been talking about it regularly on the Telegram channel, the Telegram discussion channel, this whole time. So yes, Sudan needs to be discussed, but it needs to be discussed honestly. It needs to be discussed objectively, without Western narrative, without Western spin, without Western propaganda. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening at all. I wish I could be glad that Sudan is finally getting the attention that it deserves. I wish that Sudan was finally actually being discussed, but that's not what's happening. Yes, it is trending on social media. Sudan is trending on social media, and we must talk about Sudan. But Sudan is still not really what these people are talking about. They're not really talking about Sudan. They're talking about the UAE. And they're trying to explain away the conflict in Sudan as solely the product of the evil United Arab Emirates. Because their activism is never actually about what it's about. In fact, it's never about what it's about. It's always actually about attacking the Muslim governments, attacking Egypt, attacking the GCC, and so forth. Just like it was for Gaza. They don't care about Sudan, just like they didn't care about Yemen or anywhere else. You need to understand this. These people will never support a Muslim or never support a Muslim cause unless they can make it some kind of a way to attack other Muslims. That's the only way they'll ever support a Muslim cause. And you need to understand this too. For anyone who's in America or anyone who's in the West, to the Muslims in the diaspora, these people are never going to support Africans unless it's a way to attack other Africans. That's the only thing that will ever incentivize them to support Africans about anything, is if they can find a way to make that support for Africans a way to attack other Africans. And you're not even going to find them pretending to care about Sudan for very long, because they just don't care about black people, period. So-called black people. There's one reason and one reason only that any of them are ever interested in even pretending to care about Sudan right now, after 2 years of not caring. In fact, after 30 years of not caring. And that's because they have found a way to make their care about Sudan a way to attack the United Arab Emirates. And it gives them a way to try to drive a wedge between the Arab Muslims and the African Muslims. And to pretend that there are such a thing as Arab Sudanese and African Sudanese, which in and of itself was already a British construct to begin with. That's a colonizer construct. And the last thing that the West wants is to see Muslims, to see unity between Muslims in Africa and Muslims in the Arab world. Half the continent of Africa is Muslim. It has been for centuries. No, if a Muslim cause cannot be used as a vehicle for attacking other Muslims, they're not interested. They're not interested at all. Because this is what their real activism is about. That's their real activism. These activists are committed to attacking Muslim sovereignty, attacking Muslim cohesion, attacking Muslim regional power. That's what they're really, that's the real focus of their activism. And if you're foolish enough to go along with this, to collaborate with the West in pushing these sorts of deceitful narratives, well, I feel sorry for you. They'll tell you that the RSF is a proxy militia of the UAE, and the UAE is trying to carry out a colonial takeover of Sudan. Because what? They need the gold, right? That's the narrative. They need the gold. They need the agricultural land. They want ports to control the Red Sea. So they have empowered the RSF to take over Sudan. Or if not the entirety of Sudan, then at least to take over Darfur. The UAE is financing RSF. They're arming RSF. They're even providing troops to the RSF and so forth. This is the narrative that they're pushing. Okay? And everyone is just going along with it, hook, line, and sinker. And as long as they can repeat it enough, the narrative gets picked up in the algorithm. They'll just have to keep repeating it, and it'll get picked up, and they'll never have to prove anything. The same way that they told lie after lie after lie, and it spread like wildfire across social media about Saudi Arabia and about the GCC and so forth, being so-called in bed with the Zionists and so on. No one ever has to prove anything. And the debunking never spreads as far and as wide as the lies do. Because the West already made you hate your own people, made you hate your own states, made you hate your own government so much that you're always ready to believe anything and everything that they say that's bad about them. Your hatred is all the proof that you need. Your inferiority complex makes everything bad about the Muslims true in your mind. And you take as authoritative the word of people who have never in their lives, never in their entire history, ever told anything but lies. You understand? And you are casually, reflexively dismissive. You dismiss as lies anything that our own governments say, anything that our own people say. I've seen the evidence by the Burhan government about the UAE complicity in RSF crimes that they submitted to the ICJ. I've seen their evidence. And if the case had not been dismissed on the grounds of lack of jurisdiction, which it was, if it had not been dismissed on those grounds, it would have been dismissed on the grounds of lack of evidence. Try to understand politics. That case was a political move by Burhan to try to get UAE support for himself and for his regime. Because even the United Nations accusations about complicity that were used in the ICJ case, that they used as evidence in the ICJ case, even that evidence said that it didn't meet an evidentiary standard of any court of law. You're literally talking about weapons, for example, you're literally talking about weapons being delivered by the UAE to Chad, the country of Chad, that ended up in the hands of the RSF. Well, that's like saying that the US supplied weapons to Hamas because some of the weapons that they sent to Ukraine ended up in Gaza, which is a thing that happened. So did America now arm Hamas? Not to mention the fact that the weapons that they're even talking about, these weapons, the shipment from Chad or from the UAE to Chad, that was in 2019, when the RSF was literally already working with the Sudanese army. Even if they had sent those weapons directly to Sudan, directly to the RSF, there wouldn't have been anything wrong with it, because they were a legitimate, recognized entity in Sudan at that time. But those weapons were sent to Chad, not to Sudan. And the UAE has an agreement with Chad to send weapons, an official agreement with them to send weapons to Chad. So if you're going to start holding one country responsible, country A responsible, when they deliver weapons to country B and those weapons end up in country C, then you might as well start prosecuting people for being involved in the drug trade, because some of their dollars, the dollars that you gave to person A ended up being found in the possession of drug dealer B. You understand me? We're talking about illicit weapons smuggling in a region that is awash in weapons ever since the U.S. took out Gaddafi. The RSF is a private militia. They don't need anyone to send them weapons. They're living in an ocean of weapons. Do you understand me? Do you understand? The Taliban fought America for 20 years without anyone supplying them with weapons. Why? Because weapons were everywhere. What are you talking about? The main supplier of weapons to the RSF was the Sudanese government itself. Do you understand? I mean, do you even know what the RSF is, where they came from? That's the Janjaweed. Omar al-Bashir armed the Janjaweed to the teeth. They were sent against rebels in Darfur. They were sent against protesters in Khartoum. They rented themselves out to fight in Yemen. They rented themselves out to Saudi Arabia and to the UAE to fight in Yemen. They fought in Kenya, in other parts of Africa. They're like the Sudanese Wagner. In fact, they had a connection with Wagner for some period of time at one point. They're not sitting around waiting for weapons deliveries. Be serious. Whatever weapons they don't already have, they'll just steal from the SAF. So if you send weapons to the SAF, that could end up in the hands of the RSF, just like Daesh in Syria. You know how America used to provide weapons to their so-called moderate groups and then Daesh would take them? You know, they have Chinese weapons. RSF has Chinese weapons. They have Bulgarian weapons. Why aren't you accusing China of arming them? Why aren't you accusing Bulgaria of arming them? Do you understand me? Why not? Well, I'll tell you why. Because you just want to attack Muslims. You just want to attack Arabs. Look, like I said, the RSF is the Janjaweed. That's who they are. That's where they came from. They've been around for a long time. I mean, do you remember when George Clooney pretended to care about Darfur all those years ago because of the alleged genocide? That was over 20 years ago. Do you understand? They've been around for more than 2 decades. This is not a new organization. And no one built them up but the Sudanese government itself. Omar al-Bashir himself built up the RSF. And by the time of the attempted coup in April 2023, the RSF already largely controlled Darfur, controlled their gold mines in Darfur, controlled gold and weapons smuggling routes in Darfur and on the borders. And yes, America and NATO's toppling of Gaddafi in 2011 obviously was a major boost for them in this regard. Be serious now. If you're going to analyze the region, be serious. And in terms of gold, like I've said many, many times, the illicit trade in gold, gold smuggling, has been going on for decades. Khartoum was never able to gain control over the artisanal mining and the smuggling. Never. The gold has always gone to Dubai because, of course, it goes to Dubai. Where else would it go? The UAE is the gold hub of the region. You can almost say that, that Dubai is the gold hub of the world. The UAE is not smuggling the gold. You understand me? The RSF and Sudani and African smuggling networks are smuggling the gold for their own profit. For their own profit. This is not profitable for the UAE. There's no import tax. There's no customs. It's duty-free. There's no sales tax. Do you understand? Sudani gold does not end up in the vault of the rulers of the UAE. You're very ignorant if you think that. It goes to whatever shady merchants that they have relationships with in the gold markets, in the gold souk, with who accept gold with no provenance, with no certificate, no chain of custody. And it is sold duty-free with no sales tax for the profit of those merchants. And many of these merchants are all part of the Sudanese and the RSF networks and their companies. Understand, this is not gold that's ending up in the pockets of the sheikhs of the UAE or it's going into the government coffers of the United Arab Emirates or anything like that. The UAE already legally owns the biggest gold mine in Sudan. And they import legally from Sudan with duties to the government of Sudan. Do you understand? It is not in their interests to support or to encourage gold smuggling. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, some of you are literally pretending that there's some sort of an agreement that the UAE has some sort of a deal with the RSF. Give us gold and we will give you weapons. What are you talking about? Like the owner of a shop in the gold souk is sending out rocket launchers to the RSF in exchange for smuggled gold? Use your mind. This is not how anything works. The UAE as a state, as a government, receives no benefit, minimal to none, for the gold that is smuggled by the RSF. The gold that goes into the UAE's own reserves, gold reserves, well, that comes from the mine, their own mine that they bought, that they pay for, and that they import legally. There is no proof whatsoever of them sending weapons to the RSF. There is proof of the RSF having weapons that the UAE sent elsewhere. But like I said, Hamas had American weapons that were supposed to be in Ukraine. But black market smuggling of weapons is a thing. Yes, and like I said, this idea that the UAE is trying to, install the RSF as the controllers of Darfur. They were already the controllers of Darfur before 2023. And as for agricultural land, UAE companies already own and have already cultivated over 50,000 hectares of farmland in Sudan, and they have already signed agreements for another 162,000 hectares of land. Do you understand? These deals are already done. They were done before April 2023. And okay, Red Sea ports. Well, again, this narrative is also false. In December 2022, 5 months before the conflict started, Sudan had signed a deal with a consortium of Emirati companies, including the Abu Dhabi Ports Group and Invictus Investment Group, to develop the Abu Amama port, which is north of Port Sudan. That's a $6 billion project that included developing the port itself and then a free trade zone and like a road linking the ports to agricultural zones and so forth. And the conflict has disrupted all of that. No, the Emirates has not benefited from this conflict. You're very foolish if you think they have. They're not responsible for this conflict. They did not create the RSF. And there is no evidence whatsoever that they are funding the RSF or that they are arming the RSF. What there is evidence for is that they have provided something like $700 million in humanitarian relief and aid and food to Sudan. There's proof of that. That's direct funding to the people of Sudan. And that's who you want to boycott now. You want to try to attack the economy of a country that has sent almost $1 billion worth of aid to Sudan, that has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Sudan, that has developed tens of thousands of hectares of land in Sudan. That's who you want to boycott. And that all makes sense to you, because none of these facts holds as much weight in your mind as Western Muslim against Muslim narratives. And you call yourself decolonizing. You call yourself decolonizing while you're spreading the colonizers' lies. You're spreading the colonizers' paradigms about Arab and African Sudanese. And you're demonizing a country that is actually the leading single country donor in terms of direct pledges and direct delivered funding to Sudan's humanitarian needs. You understand? And you don't think you're getting played. Look, I despise the RSF. I despised the RSF before you even heard of them. I despised them ever since they were the Janjaweed. I despised the RSF when the government of Sudan organized them in the first place. When the government of Sudan organized them and funded them and armed them and then legitimized them. I despised them when they tried to overthrow the Burhan government. They are a ruthless, vicious, sadistic mercenary force, and they always have been. Just like Hezbollah, just like Wagner, just like the U.S. Army, just like the American police force. I said right after that coup attempt happened, that I thought that the UAE probably approved for them to do it, because they thought that the RSF could win and win easily. And in the early days, it looked like they would. And the fact is that after 2 years, the SAF has not been able to defeat them, even while the SAF has the support from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Turkey, from Iran, from Russia, and so on and so on. It does not look like the RSF is going anywhere. And that's probably why the UAE has not taken sides against them. Because look, like I say, they have been a powerful player in Sudan for 20 years. Darfur has been their territory for most of this time. I wish they could be wiped out. I wish they would be wiped out. But it does not appear to be likely. And if you imagine that the UAE holds the kill switch to the RSF, you are sadly mistaken. And America does not hold the kill switch either. And you and I both know that America wouldn't hit the kill switch even if they had one. You understand? Well, you must be out of your mind if you think that America is about to do anything, is about to try to intervene in any way whatsoever to save Sudani lives. You are either out of your mind or you are literally an infant who has no recollection whatsoever of everything that that country, that the United States of America has done to Sudan for the last 30 years or last 40 years. And no, I'm sorry, if you are trying to call for America to intervene in Africa, to intervene in the Muslim world, well, you're nothing but a collaborator. You can't be a bigger traitor than that. Wallahi, anyone who's trying to push for American intervention in Sudan is an enemy of Sudan and an enemy of their own selves. You are not going to solve this problem by the creation of false narratives. You have to actually understand reality. You have to deal with the reality as it actually is, not create and fabricate and concoct whatever sort of narrative you think is going to help you get people riled up, to help you mobilize people. Okay? I understand why some people would want to do that. I understand the rationale. You want people to care about Sudan, so you simplify the situation and you gift wrap a villain for them, one that they're already primed, fully primed, to hate anyway, another Muslim. They're primed for that. And all your Kafir friends, your liberal friends, your camouflage neocon colonizer activist types, and you know that they're never going to actually care about Africans. They're never going to actually care about Muslims anywhere in the world. And in fact, they can't even actually care about any non-white, non-Westerners anywhere in the world. That's a fact. All they can ever do is to redirect their hatred and redirect their anger towards some other African, some other Muslim, some other non-white, non-Westerner, and then call that compassion, the redirection of their hatred and anger. Yes, that's what their compassion is. That's the only thing that their compassion is. They just want to have the opportunity to be able to be allowed to hate on some non-white, non-Westerner, on some Muslim, on some Arab, on some Asian, that they can dress that up like it's righteous outrage on behalf of some non-white, non-Western victims. But the truth is, they don't care about any victims. They're only interested in any victim if it lets them direct their hatred and direct their anger at any victimizer other than themselves. That's all they're about. But if you are African, if you are Muslim, if you are Arab, and you are calling upon the West for help against other Africans, against other Muslims, against other Arabs, well, you've been in the slave master's house for too long. And you forgot what that slave master does when he goes out into the field. He never comes out into the field except that he whips everyone. He beats everyone. He lashes everyone, every man, every woman, every child. Do you understand me? So if you're in the Muslim diaspora, you shouldn't be lobbying or pressuring those governments in the West to do anything at all, but stay out of the Muslim world. Stay out of Africa. Stay out of the global South. That's the only thing that you should be pressuring those governments to do. Don't you ever try to tell Washington, try to lobby or push Washington to put pressure on this or that Muslim government, or to put pressure on this or that African government, or this or that Asian government. That's betrayal. Wallahi, that's betrayal. You need to just tell them to mind their own business and stay out of ours. That's what you need to be asking and telling Washington that they need to do. Sudan is only in the mess that it's in because of decades of American economic violence. Debt traps, IMF loans, sanctions, and bombing. The protests that led to the toppling of Omar al-Bashir were over economic conditions that were imposed by the West in the first place. Do you understand? If Sudan had been allowed to develop and to prosper, then there never would have been a Janjaweed, there never would have been an RSF, and there never would have even been a coup in 2019 or a war since 2023. None of this would have happened. All of this comes back to the very people who you are now asking help from, and to the very people whose narratives you are now pushing. Those are the people who created this problem in the first place. And now you're trying to mobilize and you're trying to win sympathy from people who not only actually do not care about you and never will, but who actually hate you. You need to understand this. You really need to get this through your mind. Those colonizer activists, those Western liberals, you and I both know that if Iran was backing the RSF, they'd be calling them part of the axis of resistance. Yes, they would. Just like the Houthis who kill Muslims, just like Hezbollah who kills Muslims, just like the Iraqi militants and the militias in Iraq that kill Muslims. Because yes, Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Turkey, they're backing the SAF. And if the UAE was also backing the SAF, but Iran was backing the RSF, then you people would say that the Janjaweed are heroes. You and I both know they would. Look, I'm not telling you that the Janjaweed or that the RSF are any good. They're not good. They're no good. The SAF has committed crimes too, no doubt, but nothing like the RSF. The RSF is wicked as far as I'm concerned. But I'm telling you that the people that you're trying to win over to your cause do not care even slightly about wickedness or about goodness. They don't care about the lives of the Sudanese people at all. They just want to see Muslims at each other's throats. They just want to see Africans at each other's throats. And they want to see the whole regional project of collective sovereignty fracture and fall apart. That's what they want. And they want the whole region to stay under America's boot. And you're appealing to these people. I know what they'll say, these collaborators. Oh, there goes Shahid again, right? Defending the UAE, defending the Gulf, defending the Arab regimes. They'll call me a bootlicker. Meanwhile, you're licking the boot that's literally on your neck, and you're trying to get our necks under that same boot too with yours. You call me defending the UAE just because I tell the truth. Just because I'm speaking based on proofs, based on reality, based on facts and evidence. Why wouldn't have to say any of this if you didn't tell lies all the time? If you collaborator Muslims wouldn't parrot the lies of the kuffar all the time, but you've been under them for so long that you actually think they're taller than you. You actually have been under their narrative fog for so long that you can't even tell right from left. You can't tell truth from falsehood. Or even how to tell the difference between truth and falsehood, between right and left, good and bad, and right and wrong. So you just look to them. You became so dependent upon them to tell you what's going on. And they don't do anything but lie to you, ever. And then you spread their lies, thinking the whole time that you're doing something good, that you're doing something just, that you're doing something right. No, your reliance upon them, you're referring to them, you're repeating everything that they say. These are all artifacts of your own oppression. You don't have to be like that anymore. At Middle Nation, we deal in realpolitik, the way things actually are and the way things actually work in the world, whether we like it or not. And like I said, the fact of the matter is that the RSF, the Janjaweed, has been a powerful actor in Sudan for over 2 decades. Do you understand? They have made themselves useful to many parties in Africa, in the Middle East, and so forth. They've developed strong relationships with powerful players all the way to Latin America. Hemedti, the leader of the RSF, is the richest man in Sudan. Like I said, they control the smuggling routes. They've built tribal alliances in Darfur and elsewhere. They've been recruited by other African governments and so on to provide security, to handle crackdowns and so forth, even EU governments. Understand, this is the factual reality. It's unrealistic to imagine that the RSF is going to disappear. Like I said, they mostly control Darfur already. The UAE has chosen to not take sides against them. They have chosen to not shut down their companies in the Emirates. They have chosen to not openly support the SAF because the RSF is a factor in Sudan that's not going away. They didn't make them a factor in Sudan. They're not why RSF remains a factor in Sudan. See, this is where you also get yourself lost in these Western narratives and these Western paradigms that always deny any agency to Africans. Like if the RSF exists and if they have any power to do this or that or the other, then it must be because someone else is running them. They're someone else's proxy. No, they existed before. They had power before. They were a factor before without anyone from outside. They are Sudani made. And when Burhan said that they were going to transition to a civilian government, and he said that he was going to bring the RSF, he was going to incorporate the RSF into the army, Hemedti did not accept this. Okay, this is a man who commands 100,000 troops, and he controls territory the size of France. If this man tells you that he's going to try to take over the government, what are you supposed to do? If he succeeds, okay, he succeeds. If he fails, he's not out of options. He can keep fighting, and he can withdraw to the territory that he already has under his control, the territory he already has in his hand. So then what? Remember, Darfur was historically not under Khartoum anyway, in pre-colonial times. And to a great degree, like I say, to a great degree, even under the Sudani, the nation state of Sudan, Darfur was already separate. So now you have a territory that is functionally under someone else's control, but that was never under Khartoum's control in the first place. I mean, do the math. If the RSF cannot take over the government, then they almost will inevitably retain control over Darfur because they already been retaining control over Darfur, and that's what we're talking about, retaining, not gaining. Do you understand? They will retain their control over Darfur, not gain it. That's like saying that the Taliban gained control over Kandahar. No, that's their place. Darfur is their place. So, okay, the Burhan government was on track to transition to a civilian government, right? So theoretically, Burhan is not the most important person for maintaining a good, long-term good relations with. This is probably the UAE's calculation. This is probably the UAE's thinking. But Hemedti and the RSF are going to keep being a factor. They're going to remain a factor. And part of any eventual negotiation for a resolution is very likely to include resumption of moving the government into civilian government in Khartoum. So the UAE is probably figuring that they can establish a relationship with whoever the new leader is going to be, because Burhan won't be a factor. This is probably their thinking. They are planning according to whatever probabilities and plausibilities there are of how this can go. Like any government, like the way any government does. Saudi Arabia and Egypt and so on, they're taking the side of the SAF publicly, officially. But it was very clear from the beginning, from the very first negotiations that were held in Riyadh to try to resolve the conflict, they were basically taking it as a given that the RSF would end up being a serious power in Sudan, and that there would be some sort of power sharing. Do you understand? This is an internal conflict, and external players are positioning themselves for whichever way that internal conflict might go. Because ultimately, the external players are working on long-term stability in the region, cohesion in the region. They're working on a post-Western future for the region. Do you understand? This does not get resolved by boycotting Dubai. It does not get resolved by pressuring the United States to do this, that, or the other. It does not get resolved by the complete extermination of the RSF. None of these things are going to happen. It's going to get resolved by negotiation and by compromise and by accepting the facts on the ground, by accepting the available realistic options that actually exist. When Hamidti failed to take over the government with his attempted coup, and when the SAF failed to defeat the RSF, then that made de facto partition of Sudan almost inevitable. Meaning there are going to be two authorities over that land, one in Khartoum, one in Darfur. This is most likely. That's going to either come in the form of secession or by just de facto partition and autonomy under some sort of a federation model. See, in this way, the RSF is similar to the Houthis, who, yes, have also committed major atrocities against the Muslims in Yemen, just like the RSF has done. But the Houthis have some historical claim, and they have some territorial claim. And unlike Hamas or unlike Hezbollah, they may not be forced to disarm or to disband. And they will potentially be legitimized as authorities over the north in Yemen, if not all of Yemen, with some sort of rules being put in place in Yemen, negotiated about demographic representation in the government and so on. This is how that's probably going to be resolved in Yemen. Because the reality of the fact is that real existing power and territorial control changes how you're dealt with. And we're in a time when no one in the region wants endless conflicts to just go on and on and on. Not in Yemen, not in Palestine, not in Sudan, not in Libya, not in Algeria and Morocco, and not in Somalia. All of these conflicts, inshallah bi'idhnillah, are going to be resolved not by some zero-sum equation. They're all going to be negotiated. And whoever holds ground is very likely to be legitimized, conditionally legitimized. Because no one wants to fight it out indefinitely. But obviously, working out these negotiations and working out these agreements and working out these resolutions is going to take time. And that's what's being worked on now. And then these Western and diaspora Muslim activists come along, pushing narratives that do nothing but undermine all of this, trying to turn Muslims against Muslims, trying to turn Africans against Africans, trying to turn Arabs and Africans against each other. That's all these narratives do. Well, the truth of the matter is that no one is trying to actually unify our people, build cohesion between our people and solidarity between our people, resolve our conflicts, stabilize our region, and get us out from under Western domination, except for the very countries and the very governments and the very rulers that you're attacking in your narratives. You're trying to sabotage the building of collective sovereignty, the building and the reunification of the Muslim lands, and you call that colonization. You call that imperialism, when it's actually nothing but trying to bring our family back together. We're trying to repair what the West broke. We're trying to bring back together what the colonizers fractured, and you call that colonization. And these types just want another vehicle after Gaza to try to make themselves look virtuous, to try to make themselves look moral, as if you don't have enough issues, as if you don't have enough issues that you could be addressing right there in America. The better part of 100 people get shot to death every single day in that country. Tens of thousands of people have been murdered just this year in America. Do you know that there were only 4 days in 2025 when your police didn't shoot and kill somebody? 1 million people in that country don't have a roof over their heads every night. You've got slave raids taking place across your country. You call them immigration raids, you call them ICE raids or what have you, but they're slave raids. That's what they are. Stealing people off the street and putting them in bondage. I don't know what else you call that. Putting them in bondage for the private industrial prison complex. And you have your army invading your cities. Your government is shut down. No welfare, no social security, no food stamps. You don't have enough to do. They're doing everything they can to try to get you to riot. They're trying everything they can to try to provoke you into a civil war so that they can shoot you down and lock you up. Your whole country is falling apart. You know, your White House has got a hole blown through the wall. Looks like a terrorist attack. Whole side of the White House is torn down. You ought to be able to read the writing on the wall that got torn down. Your whole country is on the road to ruin. People are buying food in installments. Oh, I think you've got enough on your plate to deal with over there. You've got everything on your plate except for a meal. No, the West created our problems. They're not going to solve our problems. No one over there is going to help us solve our problems when you can't even solve your own problems. Look at you. You have got more than enough to try to fix over there, to try to fix or try to fight or try to flee from. No, nobody in the global south leaves you thinking that you can fix anything in our part of the world, when you can't even fix your own backyard. And even if you could, even if we thought that you could do something to help us, even if we thought that you could solve our problems and fix our situations, the moment that you open your mouth and you start immediately pushing false narratives, divisive narratives, Western narratives, hateful narratives, you dispel that thought from our mind the moment that you start speaking. No, Sudan and the region is going to solve this problem. And the Muslims will solve all the problems that the West caused in our region, or that created the conditions that caused the problems that we have in our region. The Muslims and the region itself will solve these problems. And if you're a Westerner, or if you're a diaspora Muslim, and you feel like you want to be an activist, or you feel like you want to solve some sort of problems in the world, then I suggest that you start right where you are, with the problems that are right in front of you, the problems in your own neighborhood. You need to get ready. Wallahi, you need to get ready for what's coming to you. Look, global supply chains are being de-Americanized. The dollar is being systematically sidelined on the global stage, in global commerce. You're going to start seeing U.S. states that are going to opt out of federal compliance. Yes, and you're going to start seeing your own RSFs forming, militias, right wing and left wing. Oh, you have plenty to deal with right where you are, believe me. They're trying to get a war going in that country, a civil war. I don't think you have time to be trying to worry about other countries that are working their way out of colonization while colonization is working its way onto your own block. But you see, you still think that America is number one. This is the hallucination that you're under. You're just like the jinn who kept working for Nabi Sulaiman after he died, alayhi salam, because he was leaning on his staff, sitting on the throne. So nobody knew, the jinn didn't know that he had passed away until the termites chewed through his staff and he fell over. Well, that's Uncle Sam. That's like Uncle Sam right now. That's the only thing that Uncle Sam could ever possibly have in common with King Solomon, is when King Solomon was dead. Uncle Sam is already over. But all you see is the throne that he used to rule from. But just wait. He's going to collapse in front of your eyes. He's going to collapse. And only then are you going to realize that he actually passed away a long time ago.